Alright, so now I'm going to show you how to tack up a horse with a Western saddle, at least the way that I do it and the way that a lot of other Western riders do it. So I like to use this contoured pad because it has a hole in here for their withers, and that just makes sure that the saddle and the blanket are not constantly rubbing here, because if it is rubbing there, then oftentimes you will get sores or they will get rubbed raw right here just from that constant pressure. So I really like to use these pads, and they're also really nice and thick, so they just add a lot of support, especially if you do have a saddle that is a little bit too tight. This kind of just fills it out a little bit. So how I start is I throw the blanket on, and I throw it on just a little bit too high, and then I slide it back. And the reason I slide it back is you want their hair to push in the direction that it would naturally go. If you throw a blanket on and you pull it forward like this, you're pushing all of that hair the opposite direction that it's supposed to go. And you don't want to do that, because that can pinch and it'll rub them raw and they'll get sores, and then your horse is going to be unhappy and bad things could happen. So just make sure every time you throw the blanket on, throw it on too high and then slide it back where it's supposed to go, so I can feel his withers in here. And then it's not too far back where it's kind of passing this line here. If you have a really big blanket, it can be okay to pass there sometimes, but I like to keep it in front of here and then just down far enough that the saddle is going to be in the right spot. So then when I throw the saddle on, I like to set it about like an inch. You have an inch of room right here. You always want to have more room in the front of the saddle than in the back, because if you have your saddle sitting all the way up here, you are constantly going to be thrown forward, because there's going to be so much extra right here that it's just going to sit kind of unevenly, and you want a lot more support up here because that's where a lot of your weight's going to go. So, and then once you get the saddle up, you want to pull the blanket up. That way there's no pressure on his withers. Even though there's a hole right here, this can still push down and rub him raw. So really pull that up in there. That way it takes all the pressure off. And then I'm gonna undo my latigo. And this is where I'll go on the other side and pull all of this off. So come over on this side, I'll pull this off. And usually with my saddles, I like to have a little strap here that attaches the back cinch to the front cinch, and that helps make sure that the cinch never slides back here, because if that happens, you can turn your horse into a bucking bronco, and we don't want that. So usually I would have a strap that would connect the two of them. So pull down here, and then I just like to lay this over his neck. Come back over on the other side. And when you go to start doing this, you always want to do the middle, this cinch here. You always want to do this one first, because this is going to be the tightest one, and that way while you're tacking up every other thing on your saddle, the saddle's not going to fall off. If you start with this one is just supposed to be tight enough that it's touching his belly. There shouldn't really be any additional pressure other than just laying across his belly. And if you were to put this one on and then you went to go and do everything else, say he spooks at something, your saddle is going to roll underneath his belly and he's going to freak out, and it's just not going to be good. So make sure that you do this one first. So I like to pull it under, and then I put it underneath here once, over the top, and under for a second time. And then I pull it till it's kind of snug. You can't do a Texas T with here, but then I put it down here, and I pull it a little